back, it's Christine again with the Artist Pod, and today we'll be talking about how to draw a mongoose. As always, I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet, and I'm drawing straight into Photoshop. So, let's get arting. Alright, so here is the mongoose. I'm debating on whether or not to add, I probably am, sort of a lighter version of the tan color along just sort of its mouth and under its neck, but for now we're going to start with the sort of tannish kind of color. Now mongooses, I guess it's not mongoose, mongooses have sort of a dappled coat, and I'm still debating on if I'm going to do that or if I'm just going to leave it as is. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw all of this out in shadow, and what I mean by that is I'm putting very light pin pressure and I'm sticking to the individual sections. Right, I've sort of separated the fur out into these triangular-ish blocks. And so sticking within those, just sort of very, very, very light pin pressure will create kind of that shadowed effect. And then once I'm ready to add highlight, you can either put more pin pressure or you can add more lines and it'll highlight it. But for now, it's just, it's all going to be shadow, right? We have very, very little space on this side by the nose. So I'm going to get, I guess, everything except kind of this strip here at the mouth and then the neck, where I'm going to be putting a sort of a lighter cream instead. I'm going to get all of this done in shadow, and I will be right back. Okay, so I didn't finish sketching that out, or mostly, but partly my hesitation is that mongoose ears are a little flatter than this, so I don't think, I tried to like stunt them, but I don't think I stunted them enough. So I'm just going to kind of resketch them, making them a little bit stubbier, because they're kind of like on the side of their heads and not like up like I have it here. Right, so I'm going to take out a lot of that. Because they're kind of interesting. And so I just want to make sure I am getting the right like shape in. same would be right kind of over here. I did it way too big. I guess I also still had that little edge coming through. I don't know that you would have much of an edge having like re-looked at it all. There's a whole lot of fluff in them for sure. Yeah, okay. And then over here. So probably no taller than this. Yeah. Mongooses are interesting. So maybe I should change that angle. Right, because they're kind of like, it's almost like they come straight out of the side of the head. Right, so they're not going up. They're going more out. But there would be some manner of going up. Probably more than what I just did. The blend between the two. Just trying to find the right balance. This is also why I rarely show sketching, is it's a whole lot of like minute changes that I'm going in and out and taking a look and sometimes referencing pictures again. Trying to make sure I get this like to look right. That does look right though. I think that's closer. Better than what I had where they were kind of up. I had stunted them when I drew them because I knew their ears were a little like different, like shorter, stubbier, like they go down the side of the head down to about the eye. But I think my natural inclination of drawing ears taller made them too tall, so okay. Okay, so I'm gonna finish out this darker tan, and then I'll do the lighter sort of cream right through here. Oh, and then I guess their noses are pink. I'll choose a pink to do that. And yeah, so I'm gonna finish out that, and I will be right back now that we've adjusted the ears. I'm gonna start adding the highlights and shadows. We'll do the eyes later. I've actually kind of blocked out some spots of shadow. It's just it's a way to kind of make it a little quicker and easier, right? So light source is actually going to be coming from above and to the left, kind of in front of the mongoose. And that'll allow its face to have some highlight, but I'm going to be, including, obviously there's going to be some shadowing down here, down the neck, along the back of the head, and then having the cheek come back out of shadow, but still having some shadow around the eyes where it's dipping in. Yeah. So this is where either full pin pressure or more lines comes into play. Right, so, or a combination of both. I'm going to stick to my little segmented sections and just sort of build it up. Anytime I get close to an area where I've indicated shadow, I'm going to do light pin pressure. Still in those segmented sections, right, and then full pin pressure next to that. So light pin pressure, and then that full pin pressure, to kind of like gently ease it into shadow. And then, you know, as you're sort of sketching out shadows, kind of considering, you know, you want to consider where your light source is, the contours on the face. I've started adding in more shadowing more recently into some of my drawings. So right, I have shadowing under the mouth. That would be true as it rounds down into the mouth, but underneath. Just adding some extra shadows on the face can make it a little bit more dynamic. So that's what I've been doing. Making it a little bit more dramatic, making it, you know, it'll add a little bit of realism. And then I'll be adding a touch of blue and like a red or some other color in areas where it's highlighted as another sort of, you know, burst of color. So I'm going to get all these highlights done. And I will be right back. We're going to get the nose and then the ears. Nose is pretty straightforward. Right, so I'm going to have it going into shadow underneath, just sort of checking all my things, which means I'm going to put that full pin pressure here. Right, we'll pull this all the way over. It's going to go into shadow underneath where the nostril is. I'm going to have it going into shadow as it comes down, right? So I'm backing off that pin pressure so that as it comes down, it has sort of room to go into shadow. Same thing over here, right? I am not putting as much pressure as it goes underneath, but then otherwise, you know, nice happy lines. Once again, backing off under the nostril here, picking up a little bit, but again, it'd be going back into shadow. I'm going to have over here doing the same thing. So that leaves, well, we're also going to add whiskers, but that leaves, you know, the blue, sort of the finishing touches, but also the ears and the eyes for the sort of sketching it out here. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I wanted that. So the ears are in that same sort of color that the what's the word? Same color that the hair is, that the main fur color is, that sort of tannish dark. They have a lot of the sort of long hair that pushes in and over, kind of covering the ear. And it doesn't have to stay straight because it's this sort of longer, wispier hair. Of course, there is some manner of shadowing that'd be happening here too. Right, you probably have a little bit here, and that's probably going into shadow. Down here where the ears are connecting in, and allowing that to taper. especially as it's moving down the head, right? Because it's not on top of the head like a lot of other animals. It actually drops down. I'm going to give a little burst up here. This sort of edge. And then have it taper off. And then do kind of the same thing on this side, right? And have that a little bit of that edge catching. And of course that light source above and to the left, so more of this edge of the ear would catch, but it's also kind of turned away from us. So, right, and then the fluff of the ear. It's got this fluff and you can kind of see the edges of their ears. Mongooses are so interesting because their pupils, I don't know if you've seen the sketch. I mean, you have seen the sketch, but I haven't talked about it. Their pupils are like rectangular, and it's just a lot about them that's so interesting. Not all mongooses have rectangular pupils, but a lot of them seem to. When you Google it, they'll talk about it, but you can see some that don't. So that's not a hard and fast, like fully true rule, but it's true enough. Right. So now on to the pupils. Traditionally, whenever I have drawn, these more rectangular pupils, I've actually struggled with it a little bit because it's such a strange shape to draw. Right, so still kind of the same idea though. You still kind of want to come off of it in a circle as much as you can because the edges are rounded. The edges of their eyes. Right, and then it's just like a matter of getting that in. And see, the problem here, this is what I always struggle with, is you have to suggest more for us to understand what we're looking at, right? It just looks like there's this strange like blackness, but there's not. There's actually like a pupil there. So I typically on these have to draw up and over more, give a hint of what's above, even though I tend to like the darkness of the shadow of the eyelid to be casting down this far. I have to push that up a little higher. And I just never quite always know exactly how high to push it with these guys. Right, so it's gonna have to come up. Otherwise we won't understand. Same over here. It's gonna have to come up. Doesn't have to come too far up, but it has to come up enough that we can see what we're looking at. Especially on this far side because so much of it is taken out. Really don't want to go any higher. But I'm not feeling like over here it makes sense. That might be just enough. Okay. So I'm going to have a burst of light under the pupil. I usually do this. Of course over here we fade. And then light source above and to the left, so I'm going to also have it kind of on this side where it's catching as it comes back out of the light. And then on the side of the light source, I have that full pin pressure as well. And that's going to connect right into the bottom here. Edges of the iris also go into shadow. And I'm leaving where this is kind of going into shadow. instead of having that come all the way over. Oh, we could. I don't really know if that would necessarily be a bad thing. I was just gonna have that taper off, but that's enough. Yeah, and then we'll have a light flare too. That'll help. Okay, so same thing over here, right? So the side of the light source underneath where it connects in, and then allowing the edges of the pupil to still go into shadow like it would, while also allowing the top to go into shadow. So that's kind of the, I've drawn mongooses before, or I guess I should say I drew a yellow mongoose before. And it is weird. And goats sometimes have these as well. It's like weird squared off pupils. It's always weird when I draw. Right, so on this side, starts tapering off into a little bit of a shadow. Not nearly as bright as the side we came from, but that highlight needs to be solidly underneath. And then we start tapering it off. Still brighter than what's above, just not as bright as what's over. And then just, you know, we can make this brighter as well. I'm just debating on if this is enough. It's one of those things, you know, I'm used to circular pupils. Most animals have circular pupils, so it takes a little longer to figure out if I've got this. I think maybe we're gonna go with it and see what happens when I add the light flare. Right, so I am gonna add a light flare right, I guess kind of like right here. I'm gonna do the same on this side, because you want it kind of, you don't want it in the shadow. You definitely want it over enough and roughly the same shape. Doesn't have to be exactly the same shape, but close enough. Yeah, I'm just gonna enlarge this one a little bit. I actually do think that works. Okay. So, gonna add the whiskers, and then I'll be adding in that burst of like red and or orange or whatever color. Maybe orange. So just gonna do a couple whiskers above the eyes, and then back here they're kind of behind the face. So then over here they're going to be longer, because over there it's a little bit more foreshortened the angle. Next thing is the blue. Just going to kind of choose a light blue. And just draw on the shadows. So wherever there's shadows, just adding a little bit of blue. This is light pin pressure, so nothing heavy, and just fill it in. Sticking with the, whatchamacallits, the sketch. To the like already like, you know, I'm not going into the shadow, into like the black space in between, although I will inevitably be pushing in there as well. But for the most part, when I'm sketching in areas that are, I've done the lesser pin pressure, I've been mindful about the shadow. I'm going to stick to the actual sketch, right? So that's all it is, right? Is I'm just gonna fill in all of these shadowed spots with the blue. So I'm gonna get that done and I'll be right back. Now that we have that in, including a few like lines in the dark in between the batches of fur, I'm gonna choose a few spots to like brighten up the blue. It's never anything concentrated, so literally it's like one swipe here. You can see I'm just gonna brighten that up. And then I'll have like maybe another one up here. So never in one spot, just sort of scattered around his face. Just to create some extra interest. You can have a few that bunched close to each other. Oh, my voice just kind of half gave out at the end there. But nothing that's overwhelming. And really this is just kind of like looking at it and playing it by ear, by sight. You know, how does it look? And that's where I'm adding the blue. Do I think this works or not? Right, so just a few spots. And anywhere there's blue, I'll do it, right? So I'm not gonna concentrate it in one spot. I'm gonna do it all over the mongoose. I'm just gonna do one quick thing to see how this looks. Okay, so then for kind of the final touch, I'm going to choose, and it's going to be an unnaturally looking color, right? It's going to be like a really bright orange or something. I actually think that works, right? And I'm not going to fill it in everywhere, but anywhere where there'd be a nice bright strip of highlight potentially. I need to make sure that this is brighter than I think it is. I think this tan is pretty dark. Right, so just, it's kind of like meant to act as this extra bright pop of light, basically. So it'd be on the nose, and just sort of, you know, filling that in. It's not nearly as much as the blue, so it is really just meant to serve as a complement. We could also make it dappled, but I feel like that's a lot of work. Because that would really just kind of involve, right, adding like a little bit of white to each like tip. That's how you dapple it. If you want to like, right, because they have multiple colors or whatever. But I don't think we need to. I think it's fine without it. As a side note, mongooses don't actually have white whiskers, but that was the best way to make it show up, so I chose white. And there we go. A mongoose. Alright, so that's how you draw a mongoose. I hope that was helpful. In the floating nether next to me, I have other videos of art tutorials I have done, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Take care.